Greetings and welcome to our daily walk through the scripture for August the 17th. Your readings today find you starting the book of Esther, chapters 1, 2, and 3, reading 1 Corinthians 11, 17 through 34, Psalm 35, 17 through 28, and Proverbs chapter 21, verses 19 and 20. So we're starting a new book today. So we're going to give a little bit of an overview of Esther, and if time allows, we'll touch a little bit more on 1 Corinthians chapter 11 because there gets to be all sorts of different stuff in there. But the book of Esther was written, we're not really sure when it was written or who wrote it. It's an anonymous book, though tradition believes that Mordecai, whom you read about in Esther, is the author of the book. Now, the timing of the book takes place somewhere around 480 BC. This places it actually in the timeline of history before Nehemiah and Ezra. So even though it comes after in the order of the Bible, it is actually written before then. The reason for that is so that when you go from 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles, you continue in an order, and Ezra and Nehemiah happen at a natural state. Okay, so the book of Esther, though, takes place during the reign. Now, in Esther, they use a name, King Ahasuerus, or Ahasuerus, however you want to say it. He also had another name that you might have heard of, King Xerxes. Now, you say, Xerxes, where have I heard it? Well, if you're a dude and you like movies, at some point you might have seen the movie 300. This is Sparta. And that is the same Xerxes. Yes, this is the same Xerxes that faced the Greeks at Thermopylae. That is this Xerxes, okay? But during his time, he also had a beauty pageant, if you will. And yes, this is literally what made Esther queen. And as you see this, you see that the queen really, women don't really have a whole lot of rights. If the king chooses to do something, the king's going to do it. Vashti obviously decided that she was done, and so the king, well, he removed her. And so there was now an opening for a new queen. And so basically Xerxes, he kind of held a kingdom-wide beauty pageant, had the most beautiful women to be found and sought for the king, and then they went underneath the king's care for a year. For an entire year, they were basically pampered and beautied. And then after that year was up, then Xerxes finally got to meet them. Now, Esther, as we know at this time, doesn't have any parents. Her parents had passed away, and now she was being looked after by her Mordecai, by cousin Mordecai. And Mordecai was a part of the king's court. So this kind of sets the stage, and we kind of learn a little bit about Esther. And Esther is all about, the story of Esther is all about God's providence, placing people in the right place at the right time to carry out his will. We're going to see that both with Esther and with Mordecai. We're going to see God's providence take place. So as you read these first couple of chapters, you'll see some things that kind of set the tone and allow God to be victorious in great and amazing ways. For example, the plot to assassinate the king that Mordecai foils. And then we see another bad guy, the antagonist in this story, Haman. And Haman does not like the Jews. Now, remember, pay attention to the fact that Mordecai said, don't tell the people that you are Jewish. Just be a beautiful lady. That's what he says to Esther, basically. So now Haman decides that he doesn't like the Jews. And a lot of that comes in from the fact that Mordecai does not bow down or pay homage to Haman. Mordecai is a man who is pretty wise, but he also recognizes and has a little bit of pride of his own. And so he will say basically that I will not bow down before anybody but God and my king. And you are neither one of those, Haman, so you're out of luck. Haman doesn't like that. So Haman convinces the king to create an edict because of these certain people that are, basically disgracing the king. Their laws are different. They don't want to worship the king. So the king says, you know what? That's a good idea, Haman. We're going to take him down. And so that's kind of where things are set in the book of Esther. And tensions are going to rise, and we're going to see all sorts of little drama that plays out. It's going to be really a beautiful thing. Now, 1 Corinthians chapter 11, just so you know that he's talking about the Lord's Supper here, pay attention to this. We sometimes take communion, and I think we make it a little too lightly. This is something that Paul says, look, communion is not about filling your belly. It's not about making sure that you eat with the right people. Instead, communion is all about remembering the sacrifice that Jesus made. And the sacrifice that Jesus made is worthy of remembering and worthy of doing regularly and worthy of not taking lightly. So that's what Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 11. Okay, managed to cram it in. Anyway, happy readings, and we'll talk more next time.